Hi everybody. Sorry I was not streaming yesterday. Yesterday was actually really crazy. So my wife and I and our 2-year-old all had the flu or something, and my 7-year-old had to get stitches in his finger. So it was a crazy day. But I'm feeling a lot better today, and so are my wife and my 2-year-old, and my son got to stay home from school today. So it stinks that he had the stitches, but he was happy that he didn't have to go to school. After I did the last video on Wednesday, I actually had a chance to watch it. I haven't really gotten to watch all the videos I've done yet, and I noticed that I say a lot. So I'm gonna try really hard not to do that anymore because I annoyed myself trying to watch the first couple minutes. Once I get going and get into what I'm saying, it's a little bit better. But I apologize for everyone who had to listen through all those ums and uhs. So I'm sure I won't remove them all right away, but I'm gonna try to keep it in mind. And if I'm doing it a lot, maybe you could put it in the live chat and remind me. Okay, so today we're gonna go. I did it again. Today we're going to finish this hero section. It's pretty much finished, but I'm gonna go over some of the things that I did since our last video to clean it up a little bit. And there's still a little bit of work. Obviously, that text is pretty much unreadable. But before we get started on that, I just want to thank. So I tweeted earlier that I was going to do this live stream, and someone liked that tweet, and it was Alvaro Trigo. And I just think that's really cool because he does some cool open source stuff. He does a full page .js, and like really big companies use his stuff. I've worked with his stuff before, so I don't know. I thought that was really cool. I just started live streaming a week or two ago, and it was just really cool to get a like on one of my tweets from somebody that I consider to be a very good developer, and I've used his stuff before. So that was awesome. I don't know if he's listening or if he's watching or might ever watch one of these videos, but if you are, thank you. And the last thing I want to do before we get started is tell you about another YouTube channel that helped me a lot, especially when I was starting out. And that is learncode.academy. So I have it up on the screen here. I think Will Stern is the name of the guy that does this channel. He's so many videos, just really easy to get through the videos. I really like kind of the way he explains things. It helped me a lot, especially to learn about all the tooling for the front end. Being able to get, he's the first guy that I ever saw use Atom as a text editor, or as a code editor, that's what I use now. I learned how to use Grunt, back when Grunt was more popular, and then Gulp. His videos are one of the first times I got introduced to React. So many of these technologies that I use every day now, I heard about them first or learned about them first from his channel. So check it out, especially if you're new. But even if you've been doing this for a while, he does have some stuff that's a little bit higher level, and I think it's a great channel. Also, I think today he just released a video where there's some sort of contest. If you subscribe and like and comment, you could get this really awesome keyboard. So I don't know, it's worth a shot. If you don't like your keyboard, then at least you can subscribe. If for no other reason than that, you might get a free one. So I don't know Will Stern personally, and he probably doesn't know my channel exists. But I've been a subscriber for a couple of years now, and I think his stuff's great. Okay, let's move on. to what we're going to do today. So I put in the description for this video and on my tweet that we're going to go over some like responsive image stuff. I'm going to show you two ways that I do responsive images on my sites. There are other ways to do it. These are the two that I found to be the easiest and provide me with the results that I want. So the first way is really straightforward, and maybe you could probably just think of this on your own because it's really simple. So we already have a way to change things when the screen size changes, and those are media queries, right? In CSS we have media queries. So the first thing that I'll show you are just some media queries. So this is our same hero section that we did on Wednesday. The only thing I've added is I've added background size cover. And if you remember in the last video, this image, the girl in this image was just pushed off to the side. And this is an image from unsplash.com. So check that out if you need any good stock images. And I'm just going to keep using the same image. Before I had it randomly change, but just for the sake of demonstration, this is a good image to use because we can see the position of this girl with the camera change based on what we do. So just by adding background cover, it's moved her over. Okay, and this is going to make sure that everything is covered in this area. So some of the picture will get cut off if you use background cover, but you'll make sure that you never have weird spots without an image where an image should be. So that's why we use background size cover. Sorry, I think I was just saying background cover, but use background size cover. And the rest are just media queries. So if you're not familiar with media queries, these are little things we can put into CSS that basically says if a screen is a certain size, and it's not just screen size or screen width. There's a lot of different media queries you can do. You can do screen height. You can do things for if it's a print. If you want to do special styles for somebody that's printing your page. So there's a lot of stuff. But for now, we're just going to talk about width because that's what really matters to us here. And all that I've done is I'm requesting different sizes of the same image from unsplash.it, which is where these images are hosted. And at different screen widths, it's going to load a different image size. So that's great for page speed, right? This first image is 2600 by 1300. That's a pretty big image. If I look at that on my phone, I do not need an image that's that big, obviously. So it's a waste of someone's data plan if they're looking at it, and it makes your page load slower than it needs to load. So if you have a small screen size, like 500 pixels or less, I actually just load this much smaller image. So it makes sense. Now I have done something special down here. If somebody is on their phone and it's in portrait mode, then a landscape type photo is not going to look as good. So what we've done down here is actually flipped the dimensions. Right here we're having an image that's wider than it is tall, but here we're having an image that's taller than it is wide. And let's see what that looks like when we shrink it down. And you can see just how she'll change in the image as we go down. So now we see this section is actually pretty big. It does depend upon how big your phone is. But we've requested an image, so that the main part of the image, and it does depend on the content of your image, whether or not you want to do this, but for this one it works well. The main part of the image is still in focus. Now we did have to do one other thing. We added this background position center here. And that made sure that, hey, where'd it go? There it is. I shrunk it down. Okay, So that made sure that she ends up in the center. Otherwise, she's actually off to the side a bit. And I like that she's off to the side on a bigger screen. You see now she's just slightly off to the side. I actually think that kind of looks nicer. I'm not really a photographer, but that just looks better to me. But on a small screen, it just didn't look right. You could just kind of see her hand. So we want her to be in the center. So you can see there's a lot of possibilities to this. You can not only change, just shrink down the image and keep the same dimensions, but you could have totally different dimensions. You could have the image positioned differently. You could even have a completely different image for small screen sizes. If you really wanted to, you could edit your image, have totally different images that work for that screen dimension. So that's one way to do it. And I find this works well for hero images, because usually for a hero image, I do, just make it a background image in the CSS. But there's another way to do it that I think is even better, but I won't use it for a background image. So I've added in, actually before I show you that, I had an example to kind of show you what I was talking about the image dimensions. So this is an example from another site that I've done. So this is for a local development, like commercial development project. And this is the same, a background image. The only difference here is that there's this kind of overlay so that everything blends up in the clouds here. But it's the same basic thing. We have a background image, and then here are my different image sizes. So you can see we have the difference here. This is for the 600 width, and then once we get down to 500 width, the dimensions totally change. Okay, so it works better in portrait mode, especially for this particular image. There's just way too much getting cut off otherwise. Okay, so let's switch back. Let me show you these images. So I've pulled these images. Actually, this was a section that I had used on another site. Actually, I have both those sites on my GitHub profile. I'll put the links to those GitHub repos in the description afterwards. And then that way, if you want to go in and check out what I did, then you can see. The code will also be in the repo that we've been working from for the last couple of videos as well. But these images, as we have different screen sizes, these images are changing. And they're changing in a different way than with this background image. And we're using a property called srcset. So let me bring over a DevTools window. Okay, so I've just inspected that, and we can see I have an image tag here. Let me increase the size. Whoa. Wow, that totally messed up my window. Alright, let's adjust this. Okay. So hopefully that size increase was worth the trouble. So we have an image tag here, and we have our usual source for the image. And we've set our source to be the smallest image, and then we use srcset, and we have all these different image sizes, and I like to name my images by their width, so I tag on the width at the end, and then that way I can see at a glance when I'm looking at my code what size that image is. So I know that this is 400, this is 600 pixels wide, this is 800 pixels wide, and then there's some other markup here. So basically what you're telling the browser, hey, here's an image, and this image is for 400, a 400 pixel width screen. But then down here, we're actually telling the browser how much of the screen we want that image to take up. Actually, I'm sorry. for these, I misspoke. These numbers, we're telling the browser the width of the image here. And now we're saying if the width is below 600 pixels, this image is going to take up 90% of the width of the screen. Otherwise, it's going to take up 40%. So with all this information, with knowing which image is which width in pixels, and knowing how much of the screen it's supposed to take up, then we allow the browser to use that information to select the best image. And this is better than just using the media queries because the browser will take into account the screen resolution as well. So if you have a screen, you might have a screen that's not actually that wide, but it has really high resolution. Well, if you're just using media queries, you might not get the right image. But if you use srcset, the browser is going to take into account that resolution as well, and it's going to deliver the picture that's needed, and it's going to look the best. So you don't have to worry about that. You don't really have to come up with all these media queries and think of everything. You give the browser the data it needs to make the best decision based on what device it's running on. So I think that's really cool. The only trouble I've had with this before, and I just didn't have enough time to double check this before this video, so maybe I'll double check after and let you know next week. I've had it happen that depending on where you put this first image, this source, it'll actually load every time. So I guess we could test it out here. Let's look. We're going to check out our images, and we have the 600 width image. So this might be the correct way to do it. Let's just do a refresh and see what loads. What we want to load is just one of the images. Okay, great. So we just have one. So for some reason, on a previous site, I had it set up in a way that every time the page loaded, I had 2 images load. And I guess I had done something different for that. So just check your images to make sure you've done it right. The other thing to watch out for is Internet Explorer. So this is a common thing, right? Internet Explorer, especially older versions, just don't support all the cool stuff that we want to do with our sites. So Internet Explorer 11 and below do not support srcset. So what I've had happen before is if someone on a large screen tries to view this site in Internet Explorer 11, the images they're not really great quality because it just defaults to whatever you have for the source. Now the problem is you have to decide really is if someone's on Internet Explorer 11, do you want to give them the highest quality image so that you know it's going to look good no matter what, even though it'll increase load times? Or do you want to give them a lower quality image that may or may not look good depending on what their screen size is, but it'll load faster? In this case, my decision was, well, number one, this site, the analytics on this site showed me that there weren't a lot of Internet Explorer users coming to the site. This was primarily directed from the site that I pulled this code from, not the actual site that we're working on now. It was all, from the very beginning, it was directed for mobile users. All the ads that we were running to push people to the site were targeting them on mobile phones. So we were targeting mobile Facebook users and things. So our traffic was well over 80% mobile. So we weren't actually worrying about Internet Explorer a lot. And then I figured if somebody's using Internet Explorer 11, I would guess that they don't have the greatest they don't have the greatest machine, probably not the most highest resolution monitor, maybe even not a great connection. So I decided to just go with my default image as being a small image. So in terms of image quality, not great, but I'm not going to overwhelm somebody's machine. So I don't know if that assumption is correct or not, that Internet Explorer 11 users don't have awesome computers and great internet connections. I've never done the research on that. But after you implement a site, if you look at your traffic in Google Analytics, you can make a decision based on that. You'll be able to tell who's using Internet Explorer, and you'll be able to see what screen resolution that they are using, and then that can help you to decide what image you want to use there. Overall, nowadays I don't worry as much about Internet Explorer 11 or any lower than that, unless I know for sure a significant portion of my audience is gonna need to use that. I'm lucky because in my sites I've been able to do some things that only work in newer browsers, and it's worked for me, and the people I work for are okay with that. Not everybody's like that. Some people have to work in places where they have to support old versions of Internet Explorer. A lot of businesses sometimes, like banks and different things, they run older versions of things. It seems common. It's almost counterintuitive. Why would, but you might still have banks running Windows XP just because they don't want to change anything. They want to keep everything like it was. Any change might introduce some sort of security risk. So it happens that you may have to support that. But if not, srcset is awesome. So I think I've talked about srcset enough. It's great. Check out, like the MDN articles on it. It's really cool. Udacity, so udacity.com is like an online learning site. They have a great course on responsive images that goes more in depth into srcset, but also into some of the other ways that you could do responsive images that I haven't talked about because I don't really use them that much. So check that out. I'll try to remember to put a link to Udacity in as well, but it's just udacity.com. That's also a really great resource. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about, I think this is super exciting, is image compression. And the reason I'm so excited about this is because I have found some really easy to use command line tool, one command line tool and then commands for that tool that just makes image compression super easy. So I use ImageMagick. I'll link to that in the description as well. So ImageMagick is a command line tool. It's been around for a long time. Seems like everybody uses it. So it's pretty well known. There's a lot of information, the documentation is crazy. I mean, you could read documentation on ImageMagick for days on end and not get through it all. So it's a little bit overwhelming. So I'm going to share with you exactly the commands that I've found by reading the documentation, reading things on Stack Overflow, on GitHub, and and then testing them, and I've found these to give me the best results. So if I have time, maybe we'll do a demonstration of, maybe I'll download a really big image and then see how much compression we can get on it, but I don't think we'll have time. So you could try it yourself. So you will need to actually download ImageMagick, and maybe I'll make a video. I'm kind of thinking about breaking down some of these topics into small videos that I don't do live. So I don't know, let me know if that's something you'd be interested in. I think I might be able to do a better job explaining it if it wasn't live. And I like to do live because I like you guys to see my mistakes, and I don't know, maybe just give you a better idea of what things are really like when people are developing, or at least when I am. But for this, I'd rather you have better information, so maybe I'll do it. But for now, download ImageMagick. Go to the website, follow instructions. It's a little bit of a process. If you're not that comfortable with the command line, it can be somewhat daunting. So maybe you might want to practice your command line skills a bit. If I do a video, I'll go through the entire process from start to finish. But once you download ImageMagick, the main command you're going to use a lot is convert. Let me make this bigger. Okay. So if you go to a folder via the command line, so you're going to use a cd command, get into a folder, and you have a JPEG image in there. You type this command out, and the only thing you need to edit So you could literally copy and paste this. You just have to edit the file names. So the target here would be, you'd put in the file name of the file that's big that you want to compress. The result would be the name that you want to give the new file. I recommend using a different name, otherwise you will overwrite your file. So maybe you want to overwrite, but just in case you need that original file, I would leave it. So once you run this, the new file is automatically created, super compressed. I ran this, well, let's see, I ran this next step that I'm going to show you, which is basically this command, but you can do it on an entire folder of images. And if you want to take it a step further, you can use this command and you can run it recursively, which means you can run it on folders within folders. So I recently ran this actually on the server for franciscan.edu, which is the site that we are in the process of redesigning, and we'll eventually roll out the designs we're doing onto that live site. But it had over 3,000 images. There was no way I was going to go through those one by one. So I had to find a way to do it faster. So this is what I came up with. I can't remember where I found this and how I pieced this together. I wish I did, because I'd like to give credit to the people online that I got this information from. But you run this, and it went through. When I ran it on this folder, I had open the info about how big the folder was with all the subfolders and the images. And it was amazing. I could just see the amount of gigabytes just drop as this thing was going through and running. It was amazing. After I ran this command, the site loaded. The site had a 38% decrease. A 38% decrease in load times just from running this on my images. It was amazing. So this command is super powerful. I would start out with this. Just try this on a couple of JPEGs, test it out. If you have a folder, use this. Don't use this unless you really understand what's going on, because it will go through every folder and subfolder that you run it. Whatever the parent folders you run it in, everything contained in all the subfolders, every JPEG will get converted. So be careful with that. Sometimes, normally, most images you do want to change and convert to be a JPEG, and ImageMagick can do that too. It can do so much more than just compression. You can do resizing, you can change from one type of image to another. I've never found a tool that was so good at converting images from one to another. I've converted formats that clients have given me that I've never even heard of the format before, and I'm thinking, how am I possibly going to use this? And I give it a shot in ImageMagick, and I can convert it, and it works. It's amazing. So normally you do want to turn your JPEGs into PNGs if they're like a photo, usually like a real life photo of something. It'll be a lot smaller. But there's some reason you want to use the PNGs or PNGs. If you want a transparent background, then you're going to want to go with a PNG. So usually for logos and things, you want a transparent background. Go with the PNG. Sometimes for product images, you want a transparent background. You want to kind of overlay that product. Sometimes even people do cool parallax effects with products being overlaid in certain sections. Might want to go with a PNG there. They're going to be bigger though, but you can still compress them. So this is what I've found that can compress a PNG. And the thing about both of these is that I wanted something that would compress it, but would have no noticeable difference in quality. And that's what I found with both of these. And it took a lot of research and reading to figure it out. And again, I've gotten a lot of help from people on Stack Overflow, so I'm sorry I don't have the exact page to give where I got the ideas for this from and where I got some of this from. If I can find it, I'll put it in the description for the show, because I really like to give credit where credit is due. So this is a huge command, but basically what this will do is make your pings a lot smaller in terms of file size without any loss of quality. So those are basically the two file types you're going to use most often. So armed with that compression technique, you can decrease your load times on any of your sites you have right now. Just run those. In addition to that, resize your images, use those responsive images, and that's probably the biggest thing you can do for load times. There's a lot of other more complicated things you can do with caching and with gzip and all these other things you can do. But the biggest thing you can do is, even if you do all the other more complicated things and you still have really large images, your site will not be fast. But if you don't do all this, the more complicated things, and the only thing you do is get those images as small as possible in terms of file size, then your site will probably load decently fast. You're still not going to have a really good Google page speed score if you don't do the other things, but for the user, from their perspective, your page is going to seem a lot faster. I think I'm out of time. Yeah, 2:30 exactly. So, yeah, I will. Okay, I had somebody request if I can paste all the commands. So I forgot to say this. What I'm going to do, I think, is I'm going to make a gist. So if you're not familiar with a gist, it's if you want to put just a small snippet of code on GitHub, you don't make an entire repo. You just make a gist. So I'll put it in there, and then I'll put the link, and then that way everybody can see these. Maybe I'll add a little bit more description too, so that people know what these do. So I'll try to get all the links that I talked about and the gist and everything in the description today. If not today, I'll get them in as soon as I can, but I'll try to get all that in today. Thanks for watching. I've been getting a lot more subscribers. I think I only have like 28 subscribers, so it's not really a lot, but basically going from 1 subscriber 2 weeks ago to 28 is just amazing. So thanks everybody who's subscribing. Give me some feedback. Let me know, what you want to see, if there's anything additional you want to see, and I'll do my best to try to make a video about it. I will see you on Monday. Have a great weekend.